Hi, Professor Fitzwater. Mike Trammell here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Berlin Philharmonic with my second stage of the project, going over a little bit of situational analysis and a little bit of the audit that we recently completed here. A little bit about the Philharmonic. It's obviously in Germany, in the city of Berlin. Germany boasts Europe's largest economy, and consumer spending's been a little down over the last couple of years, and obviously, an arts organization, especially in the musical arts, depends a lot on folks' ability to use expendable income to pay for going to concerts. So it's been a little rough. They've had to adapt, and they've adapted through really the digital platform, which is kind of one of the things that interests me most about exploring the Berlin Philharmonic. They are a nonprofit arts organization and kind of self-governed by the individuals and musicians that make up the organization, the orchestra. Um, and in the nonprofit world, there's kind of the 30% rule that we talk about, and that's 30% of an organization's revenue comes from ticket sales, whereas 60% of revenues come from outside income like individual donations, government support, foundational grants, excuse me, things of that nature. So, um, really, the Berlin Philharmonic fits that model. They get at least 30% of their income from ticket sales, and they receive approximately 60% from the rest. They received 15 million euros in 2011 from the city of Berlin, which was about 30% of their $34 million budget, which is interesting because in the United States, our model's kind of flipped. We don't get very much governmental support for nonprofit arts, uh, so we have to go out and get individual donations and foundational grant support. Whereas in Europe, and especially in Germany, they're able to kind of rely on some governmental support, and then they supplement it with smaller amounts of individual support. A lot of people in the individual support category don't give as much because they know that the government supports the arts. So it's a little bit of a different model, a little bit of a different struggle in Europe. But either way, the model still kind of holds true that you need to generate about 30% of your revenue from your product, from concerts, from recordings, and in this case, in the Berlin Philharmonic, establishing the digital concert hall, which was huge for them. Um, Generally speaking, the Berlin Philharmonic does a fantastic job of meeting that 30%. They regularly sell 90% of their tickets, um, and they're in the moderate range for ticket sale prices in the German economy. Pretty competitive with what's going on around them. I think it's important to note that in the German culture, art kind of is one of the sciences. It's arts and sciences, they're very interrelated. So Germany explains a lot for why they support the arts so strong, because it's a very scientifically advanced um, culture and country, and they kind of consider the arts to be part of that as well. And I think a lot of their innovation comes into play, which explains a lot of the digital concert hall. In addition, the government has a lot of protection for intellectual property rights, and obviously that falls into that category as well. So a little bit about orchestras in Germany, some more information. Germany still has 133 orchestras, and orchestra attendance in 2008 was just over 4 million. So that's a lot of potential tickets. And Let's see here. They have, so in the Berlin Philharmonic season, they have approximately 90 to 95 concerts, and 40 chamber concerts. So really about 130, 135 revenue potential concerts. And I mean, that's pretty significant if you consider that like a US based orchestra, like the one here in Charlotte, probably only has 40 to 45. So that's a significant difference. Um, so they have their concerts that they generate revenue from. They also have recordings. The Berlin Philharmonic is kind of known as being a recording giant. For a long time, even on vinyl, they were the leaders on putting classical music on recording and giving it out in a hard copy format. They have 8 Grammy Awards, 2 Classical Brit Awards, and 6 Gramophone Awards. to their name. Also, they travel internationally. They spend a lot of time on the road expanding their brand, and so they do a tour every year and they blog about that tour, which is really kind of interesting, really kind of cool. Roughly they receive about $10 million, €10 million in the revenue they receive from concerts and the like. And about 60 to 65% of those tickets are purchased on the internet. So they have some pretty savvy users when it comes to that. So that's a little bit about Germany and a little bit about the background. So we can move a little bit over to some of the audit that I recently did on the organization. Obviously, a very strong brand, been established for a very long time. So when a lot of the social media outlets kind of came around, they were already really established. So they have a lot of organic growth through the social media challenges. But their content's extremely integrated. It's managed extremely well through the organization itself. All the content comes from the organization itself, which hinders them a little bit on some of their social media aspect, because they don't have a whole lot of feedback or communication with their consumer, because a lot of it is pushed out from the organization. Let's say their target audience is between the 30 to 50-year-old demographic of professionals, generally educated, and they tend to own it, or it appears that they own their audience. They don't use a whole lot of rented platforms. They spend a lot of time cultivating their email list and utilizing that email list. Not a whole lot of rented space out there. They have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. The Facebook has 1.4 million likes and 1.3 million users. And their Instagram account has 221,000 followers. It's just kind of interesting that they're utilizing those platforms, and it's all universal. So it shows up on their blog, it shows up on Instagram, it shows up on Facebook. And I think most of it, from what I could tell, a lot of their content is unique to the platform. So they'll create unique Instagram platforms, but they're all content, but it's all kind of the same, geared towards the same thing. They have a marketplace on their website. Obviously, their website's very detailed. In the marketplace, they sell concert tickets, they sell recordings, they sell books. So they have lots of different avenues to kind of connect with those individuals. The digital concert hall allows them to both push out content in a new and inventive way that's on the digital platform, so people in the U.S. can hear live concerts. But it also provides a lot of supplemental information. So it provides films, documentaries, interviews, and a lot of that supplemental information assists in supporting their product. And in supporting that product is where a lot of that 60%, the donations, come from, because you're adding value to the product that you already have existing out there. So the digital concert hall is kind of fascinating that it does both of those things. One of the problems I found with their social media really is that there's not a whole lot of feedback from them, not a whole lot of communication with their folks. Again, it's very in-house, a very high-level quality professional generation of content, but it's pushed out. And they don't do a whole lot of responding. Now, they are responsive, but they don't do a whole lot of responding and generating a conversation with their consumers. A lot of it is response to troubleshooting calls or customer service issues. So that's kind of how they're utilizing some of the feedback that has to do with social media, and that's probably a little bit lacking for them. As far as emails are concerned, they email out weekly what's happening this weekend, what's on the docket for this Saturday. I believe it's called Live This Saturday. So they send out those emails, and then they have a lot of random emails. So I got one that said, "Hey, we're releasing a recording coming up." So they kind of have some of those emails going out as well to supplement some of those thrust emails, kind of trying to supplement their strategy as they move across. And also, when I signed up for their newsletter, I got a trigger email that was a confirmation then I had to actually follow the link and confirm that I had confirmed being on the email list. I'm assuming that's because of the European Union privacy laws, and then also just a higher level of permission marketing that they have in Europe. I think they do a pretty nice job of having a strategy stretched out and pushing themselves to have content moving out all the time. And they do a pretty great job of having across different mediums, and that really that digital concert hall is one way that they're just changing the industry. So that's a little bit of information about market analysis and first round of audit. And thanks for taking the time to listen. I'll see you in class. Bye.